There's no warning, only the tremor of a taut wire, the click of a clacker in a trembling fist, and the wordless verdict stamped on green plastic: front toward enemy. In the midnight jungle, one mind decides who lives and who vanishes, launching 700 steel balls at 4,000 feet per second. In Vietnam, that faceplate became both shield and executioner. But what if the enemy could turn this weapon back on its creators? This is the untold story of how the Claymore redefined fear, and why the line between hunter and hunted was never as clear as it seemed. Norman McLeod sat at his drafting table in 1952, staring at a problem that had haunted infantry since the trenches of World War I. Machine guns and mortars could sweep fields and roads, but nothing portable could stop a human wave at close range, especially at night, when the fog of war thickened and the enemy seemed to multiply. The Korean War's brutal lessons were still fresh: Chinese assaults overrunning foxholes, grenades arcing through the dark, the desperate scramble for firepower that never seemed to arrive in time. McLeod's answer was radical: a compact explosive charge, curved like a shallow dish, packed with a grid of steel balls and molded into plastic. When detonated, the blast would hurl hundreds of projectiles in a tightly controlled fan, creating a wall of death that could be triggered by a single soldier on command. He filed his first patent, US 2,892,407, in January 1952, describing a shaped cavity explosive that would focus its force forward. 4 years later, he refined the idea with a second filing, US 2,972,949, this time embedding a matrix of steel balls in resin, laying the groundwork for the Claymore's signature fragmentation cloud. His technical drawings and legal abstracts didn't just outline a new weapon, they mapped a doctrine. The Ordnance Corps took notice, pushing the design into government hands. By 1956, McLeod's inventions had become the backbone of a new generation of anti-personnel mines, devices engineered not for area denial, but for absolute control over who lived and who died in the kill zone. With patents in place and the Cold War heating up, the question was no longer whether the weapon could be built. It was how soon it would leave the drawing board and enter the arsenal, and what would happen when it finally did. Test ranges at Picatinny Arsenal became proving grounds for a new kind of firepower. Engineers replaced the early steel cubes with a matrix of 700 half-inch steel balls, each one locked in place by epoxy resin. When the charge detonated, these balls accelerated to nearly 4,000 feet per second, forming a dense, forward-moving cloud. The blast pattern expanded in a 60-degree fan, reaching 2 meters high and 50 meters wide at 50 meters out. Field tests confirmed the numbers. At that range, the fragment density exceeded 2,800 per square meter, enough to guarantee a lethal hit on anyone standing in the fan. The finished weapon weighed just over 3 pounds and fit inside a molded plastic case stamped with a blunt order: front toward enemy. Behind the steel ball matrix, 24 ounces of C4 explosive waited for a command detonation. Adjustable legs and dual detonator wells gave soldiers flexibility and redundancy in the field. Waterproofing and a durable case meant the mine could survive the mud, rain, and chaos of real combat zones. In 1960, the United States Army officially standardized the M18A1 Claymore as a frontline item. Its specifications and employment methods were codified in Field Manual 23-23, issued in 1966. The manual classified the Claymore as a command-detonated, directional anti-personnel mine, intended for perimeter defense, trail ambushes, and rapid fire support. Doctrine now demanded that every infantry squad be trained to deploy, aim, and detonate the weapon on command. The Claymore was no longer a prototype. It was doctrine, ready for war. Rows of Claymores, each angled outward along the razor edge of a jungle perimeter, transformed the night into a calculated trap. At Khe Sanh in early 1968, engineers mapped every likely approach, aligning mines and overlapping arcs that covered every meter of bare earth. The numbers were cold and precise. Each device contained 700 steel balls, and when command wires snapped the circuit, those fragments tore through the darkness at nearly 4,000 feet per second. In the kill zone, the effect was instant and absolute. After-action reports from Khe Sanh recorded an average of 1.8 confirmed enemy dead per mine. The mines didn't just kill, they erased the possibility of a massed assault. Patrols found bodies thrown backward, their gear shredded, the jungle floor cratered and silent. Trail ambushes followed a similar geometry. Mines were set at knee height across narrow paths, sighted with a peep and a length of wire, waiting for a column of boots to break the silence. When the lead element reached the center of the fan, a single squeeze of the clacker detonated the charge, unleashing a wall of steel that left little behind. Units tracking infiltration rates along these trails reported a 30% drop in enemy movement wherever claymores were deployed. The Mine Watch logs from Khe-San's Alpha perimeter documented a shift. After 3 consecutive detonations, enemy sappers abandoned the main approach, forced to probe for new, unmined routes through the undergrowth. On paper, the Claymore delivered tactical supremacy, an invisible tripwire against the night. But every mine that fired left a new question hanging in the smoky air. What if the enemy learned to turn these weapons around? What if the next blast came from friendly lines, not the jungle beyond? Night after night, the men assigned to Mine Watch duty sat in the dark, listening for the slightest noise beyond the perimeter wire. Every 4 hours, a new soldier took the post, eyes fixed on the faint outline of plastic cases staked at the jungle's edge. The official rotation, spelled out in FM 23-23, was designed to prevent fatigue, but sleep rarely came easy. With each shift, the sense of isolation grew sharper. The only thing standing between the enemy and their position was a handful of claymores, silent, invisible, and holding the power to erase life in a single stroke. First Lieutenant James Miller described the moment of detonation in his after-action report. It was like a thunderclap that split the night. 1 second, there was only the sound of insects. The next, the world was shredded. That sound, the sudden, absolute violence, left a mark on everyone who heard it. For the men on watch, the anticipation was almost worse than the blast itself. Each minute dragged, nerves stretched thin, as they waited for a sign that the enemy was near. Captured Viet Cong radio logs revealed a different kind of fear. Enemy patrols spoke of the Claymore as a ghost in the jungle, a weapon that could not be seen or heard until it was too late. One log recorded a squad leader ordering his men to avoid a trail entirely after 3 mines detonated in a single week. The psychological toll was not limited to the Americans. On both sides, the Claymore turned the darkness into a minefield of doubt, where a single misstep could mean instant death. But for the Americans, a new terror was spreading, one that would soon make every Mine Watch shift a test of trust as much as vigilance. What if the weapon meant to protect them had been turned around, waiting for a signal from the other side? Khe-San, March 1967. A patrol moved out along the Alpha perimeter, trusting the row of claymores that had guarded the line for weeks. Unknown to them, a Viet Cong sapper had crawled through the wire the night before, found a half-buried mine, and flipped it around. When the patrol hit the tripwire, the blast ripped back into U.S. lines. 4 killed, 7 wounded. At Firebase Marianne, NVA sappers scavenged abandoned claymores, rewired them, and lined a supply road. The next morning, a resupply convoy rolled through, 2 killed, 5 wounded. Operation Tailwind, September 1970. Special forces left a claymore covering their retreat. NVA troops retrieved it, reversed it, and waited. As the Americans withdrew, the mine detonated. 3 dead, 6 wounded. These were not isolated incidents. A 1971 Army analysis revealed a hidden toll. 12% of all Claymore-related U.S. casualties in Vietnam came from reversed or mace-oriented mines. Sergeant Ramirez called it the moment the jungle itself turned traitor. Captain Laird wrote, "Every mine became a question mark." Red front tape became the new frontline defense after too many nights ended with American casualties from their own mines. A 2-inch band of red was tied around the Claymore's face, a stark warning to anyone checking orientation in the dark. The rear edge got a strip of black. This simple code, added to the 1973 revision of FM 23-23, cut down on deadly mistakes and made it harder for sappers to reverse a mine unnoticed. Engineers also introduced the reverse seal, a rubber gasket over the detonator wells, so a blasting cap could only fit from the correct side. Field testing showed this fix dropped accidental rear detonations by 90%. The Claymore itself kept evolving. The M18A2, fielded in 1990, used a lighter polymer case and a more powerful explosive. The M23 modular system, now entering service, lets troops mount directional mines on vehicles or drones. But the core design, 700 steel balls, command detonation, and a 60-degree fan remains unchanged. Today, U.S. inventories list nearly 450,000 Claymores in active service. Misfires are rare, less than 0.5% per Army data. Because the mine is always command detonated, it complies with Protocol 3 of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. The Claymore endures, still trusted by infantry, still feared wherever it is deployed. Decades later, the Claymore's legacy still shapes how soldiers fight and fear in every close-quarters war zone. Remote, silent, and surgical, it is a weapon that turns trust into doubt with a single wire. In conflicts today, the enemy is often invisible, but so too is the mine. Stay vigilant.